Talk a little bit about oxygen systems, a little bit more that you need to know regarding oxygen. You might be asked a few of these topics on your knowledge exam as well. And we do have a section here for you to give me some questions. A little bit on vision and nighttime. You know, we depend a lot more on our rods at night. Cones are for color, which are often used in the daytime, but can be used limited at night if there's enough light being reflected. So we rely on the rods, and rods are very dependent upon oxygen levels. So as we go up in altitude at night, our rods can become a certain percent blind. And they say at 12,000 feet, your rods are 50% blind. So that does make a huge difference in your ability to see properly. You may see pilots wearing oxygen masks, even though they're below the FAR requirement for supplemental oxygen. Couple different rules. Looking at low level and high altitude rules, right? We've already talked about low altitude requirements, 12,500 foot cabin pressure altitude, 14 and 15,000 feet. We're not going to talk about those. We're going to talk about the high altitude requirements for pressurized aircraft. So that's the next part. You probably know the low level is pretty good, but the high altitude ones got some rules with them. First rule is that when you fly above flight level 250, you must have a reserve oxygen supply, a minimum of 10-minute reserve, plus any low-level requirements. For the most part, this reserve oxygen supply is mainly to get an aircraft into an emergency descent if it becomes depressurized. So we want to get down to a breathable altitude in a hurry. All right, the next rule begins at flight level 350. I'm going to tell you the rule first. The rule, one pilot must wear a mask at all times. That is the rule, and I'm emphasizing the rule, all right? The rule, one pilot must wear a mask at all times when you're above flight level 350. I'm emphasizing the rule because the FAA does go as an exception to the rule. And the exception is if you are below flight level 410. So there's a limit to the exception here. If you have two pilots at the controls, each has a quick donning mask. That means one hand, 5 seconds, supplemental oxygen's in place. Then neither pilot has to wear a mask. So if you're flying above flight level 350 and below flight level 410, as long as you get two pilots at the controls with quick donning masks, neither are wearing it. If one pilot gets up from their station and does some duties in the back of the aircraft, you now have only one pilot at the controls. They must be wearing the oxygen mask. When you go above flight level 410, the exception is over. Doesn't apply anymore. So we go back to the rule again. All right. So hopefully you can get those down. You'll definitely have these rules on the next exam as well. Looking at oxygen, it is stored in normally green bottles. That's what you see up in the nose of the aircraft there. If you see those green bottles, those are high pressure bottles, 1800 PSI. If you're in an older aircraft, you'll probably see yellow low pressure bottles. but you probably won't be seeing those around. High pressure bottle, 1800 PSI. In order to get them serviced, you have to look at the chart supplement. Look up at the airport, and it'll tell you whether or not they have oxygen bottle replacement or oxygen bottle servicing, in other words, refilling. And we must have aviators breathing oxygen, 99.5% pure. That's because of the low moisture content. Then why? Why do I want low moisture coming through my tanks and my lines to my mask? Right. So let's think about this. Right now, the pressure that you're breathing is about 14.7 pounds per square inch. That's normal sea level pressure. So we're somewhere around that for what you're breathing into your lungs. You are not going to breathe in 1800 PSI, right? That would just blast your lungs wide open and you wouldn't be breathing much longer, right? So we have to step down that pressure through a regulator. So we got to take 1800 PSI and drop it down to somewhere near 14.7 pounds per square inch. That's a pressure drop. And again, we remember with a pressure drop, I get a temperature drop. Therefore, if I have moisture in my line, that temperature drop will go below freezing. And at the regulator there, I will freeze up my line and get no oxygen. So very important that you get the low moisture content, pure oxygen. There are 3 different breathing mask systems. You'll be asked about one of them on your exam, so you have to learn all 3 of them. And pretty much we're looking at 3 things with these units. First of all, altitude that they're useful. Our first one's a continuous flow system. It's good up to 25,000 feet. Now, that's just a general number. Some of them might go a little higher. Some of them might go a little lower. So somewhere around 25,000 feet. How do they work? That's the next bit. In this case, the continuous flow system, once you activate the bottle, oxygen continuously flows to the mask and or bag if it has one here. If you don't breathe, it still flows, hence the name continuous flow. You will use oxygen very quickly in that type of system. And then the third item to know is, can we run diluted oxygen to the mask or not? When we say diluted, can I mix my oxygen with the cabin air to help stretch out the tank a little bit longer? And in this case, with the continuous flow system, you cannot. It only runs 100% oxygen all the time. Now the bag, purpose of the breather bag, so it kind of has a little bit of excess oxygen in it. And when you inhale, it may deflate a little bit. And when you exhale, it just fills back up again. But oxygen is supplied to the mask. It kind of vents it overboard to that bag if needed. Otherwise, you exhale through holes in the mask, not into the bag. Another one is the demand system. So we're looking at a system that can take us up to approximately 40,000 feet MSL. That demand system's got a much more complicated mask system, form fitting, attaches very tightly to your face. And it works by breathing in, check valves open, and oxygen flows. When the pilot exhales, the check valves close and oxygen stops flowing. Hence the name demand. When you demand oxygen, it flows. This system, you can run it as the diluter system. So diluter demand might be another name you hear from time to time here. When we say diluter, we have the ability to mix cabin air with the oxygen. That effectively helps lengthen the time on your tank. But you also have the option of running only 100% oxygen from it too. Last system is called pressure demand. So when you are above 40,000 feet, the ability of your chest to pull in oxygen from a mask diminishes. So therefore, it's pushed in under pressure. Okay? It's a demand system, right? So when you breathe in, it's pushed in. So it's a little higher pressure than the 14.7 pounds per square inch. And that can also be diluted with cabin air as well. So 3 breathing systems for you. You got to know all 3, but you'll be asked one of them on the exam, and basically altitude, how does it work, and can it be diluted are the 3 things I'm looking for.